Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me. It's a quaint event that's been happening for centuries in South Carolina. The concept's been around much longer. We know it here in the South as camp meeting, but its origin is from early Bible times, with celebrations known as the Festival of Booths, the Festival of the Ingathering, or the Festival of the Tabernacle. Camp meeting is fall's first true Thanksgiving observance. It's a time for worship, praise, fellowship, and a lot of good food. It's as much a part of Southern culture and heritage as sweet tea or cornbread, or dinner on the grounds on Sunday homecomings. Good enough for me. Here in Dorchester County, South Carolina, in the fork of Interstates 95 and 26, is the Indian Field Campground, one of the largest in the state, with 10 acres that are inhabited just 8 days of the year. The Indian Field Camp Meeting began in the late 1700s as Methodism was introduced to the colonies.
Time was set during the fall of the year when farmers had finished up their crops and a little money had come in, and they had time before the next year started to have camp meeting, and the circuit riders scheduled their time to accommodate this sort of schedule.
For Mr. George Knight and his family, camp meeting tradition goes back 4 generations. George has been an officer on the Camp Meeting Board of Trustees for years, just like his father and his father before him. In fact, George has attended a week-long camp meeting with his family for 74 years. All told, that's more than a year and a half of life. Back in the days before radio and television, the internet, or newspapers, camp meetings served multiple purposes, mostly spiritual revival, with a good bit of family reunion and fellowship thrown into the mix.
It's a great place just for fellowship, seeing people that you haven't seen since last year, conversation, joking, just being with one another. And of course, we enjoy good food and the spiritual aspect of it.
The campground has a unique layout. There are 99 simple wood frame cabins, called tents, in a big open circle facing inward towards the camp's focal point, the tabernacle, where 3 church services are held each day of camp meeting. A 7 a.m. prayer meeting, an 11 a.m. worship service, and another service at 8 p.m. Each of the cabins or tents is very similar in design, built with unfinished weathering board, a front porch with a couple of benches for gathering, and up to 4 bedrooms to accommodate larger families. There's no indoor plumbing, and the floors are bare ground covered with straw for the duration of each camp meeting. In back of each tent, on the outside of the circle, is another porch, under which is found wood stoves and simple kitchen appliances for fixing meals. 3 full meals a day means staples like fried chicken, garden fresh vegetables, and delicious desserts. In times gone by, families, mostly farm families, came to the campground in covered wagons and brought with them livestock to be slaughtered and cooked during the week. Back then, before the tents were built, the men slept under the wagons, while the ladies and children slept inside under cover away from the elements. Families are called for worship by the sounding of a long, antique, handmade copper horn, which echoes through the campground. As night falls, the smoke and satiating aroma from wood stoves stoked from supper wafts across the campground. Small bonfires light the darkness and serve as a magnet to attract families and friends. There's limited electricity in each tent, primarily for a light bulb or 2 and a few basic electrical kitchen appliances. But don't expect to see TVs or hear boom boxes in the campground. Those items are forbidden.
The campground was lit at night by what we call fire stands. These were 4 posts put in the ground, formed square about 8 by 8. Dirt was thrown on top of the boards, and then they built up fire on top of those stand, and they had a caretaker or someone. Wood was always piled by them before camp meeting to walk around the campground and continue to throw wood on it to keep it lit. Underneath the tabernacle, kerosene lamps, and within the tents, kerosene lamps provided the light.
There have been surprisingly few tragedies associated with the Indian Field Campground, surprising because of the thousands of people that gathered in such primitive ways for 8 straight days. One tragedy, though, proved to be fatal.
During the war between the states, people from Charleston came up to the campground when gunboats began to bombard Charleston, some 500 of them. And while they were here, a smallpox epidemic broke out. Several died and are buried back on the property here at the campground.
The campground was the target of vandals 10 or 15 years ago when they torched and destroyed 10 of the cabins. As much as necessary goes into the upkeep of the campground throughout the year. Mr. George and his son rebuilt the tabernacle pews a few years back, and a group helped to restore the aging tabernacle gable hipped roof, supported by exposed rafters, beams, and square wooden posts, many of which are from the original construction. Indian Field does have a rich history. In 1973, the campground was listed on the National Register of Historic Places inventory. In 1810, Francis Asbury, the leader of the American Methodism, preached at Indian Field. And the campground is tied to another historic event, the composition of the tune we now know as the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
And it is believed that the Battle Hymn of the Republic was first written at this very campground.
The words we associate with the song today were written much later, but the tune grew out of South Carolina camp meetings, with its origins said to have been right here at Indian Field. Regardless of the reason you attend camp meeting, whether for worship, family, friends, or food, one thing is certain: there will be a revival.
Somewhat a mountaintop experience in your faith or in your religion. I experienced, and many others have here at this camp meeting. More of what I sort of expect heaven to be like in the real world, a place where everybody seems to be happy, full of conversation, and just the good things that you enjoy.
Deep river, Lord, I want to cross